Hey, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name's Brina, and today is Saturday, so it's Makeup and Murder Saturday. Although, like I said in my last video, I'm not really loving that title, so I was thinking about changing it to maybe Makeup and Mystery, just because I feel like that opens it up to me being able to talk about a few more topics. If you have any suggestions that are more clever than that, let me know in the comment section. And with that being said, let's get into today's video. Today we're going to be talking about Aileen Wuornos. Aileen's parents were Diane Wuornos and Leo Pittman. They got married when Diane was only 14 and Leo was only 16. They got married on June 3rd, 1954. Less than a year later, they had Aileen's older brother Keith, who was born on March 14th, 1955. And less than a year after that, Aileen was born on February 29th, 1956. But 2 months before Aileen's birth, her mother Diane filed for divorce from Leo, who was actually incarcerated during the time of Aileen's birth. He was a diagnosed schizophrenic, and he had been convicted of sex crimes against children. When Aileen was 4, her mother Diane abandoned her and Keith, leaving them with her parents, with Diane's parents, Lori and Britta Wuornos, who were both alcoholics. Lori and Britta legally adopted Keith and Aileen on March 18th, 1960, thus making her Aileen Wuornos. Aileen did not have the best childhood. Like I said, her grandparents were alcoholics and her parents were not at all in their lives. And by the time Aileen was 11, she had begun selling her body at school. In exchange for sexual favors, Aileen would get cigarettes, drugs, and food. And it also turns out that Aileen has also been engaging in sexual activities with her older brother Keith. I'm not sure if her older brother was sexually abusing her or what exactly the situation was there, but Aileen would later disclose that her grandfather had sexually assaulted and beaten her while she was a child. I guess that would answer the question why Diane got married at the age of 14. If her father is abusing his granddaughter, I'm sure we can all guess Diane was also being abused by her father. On January 30th, 1969, Aileen's father Leo killed himself in prison. About a year after her father's death, Aileen, who is now 14 years old, finds herself pregnant. She had been raped by one of her grandfather's friends, and that was whose child she was carrying. On March 23rd, 1971, Aileen gave birth at a home for unwed mothers, and her baby boy was placed for adoption. A few months after giving birth, Aileen dropped out of school, and around the same time, her grandmother died of liver failure. About a year after her grandmother's death, 15-year-old Aileen found herself homeless after her grandfather threw her out. This is when Aileen turned, I guess you could say, back to prostitution, since she was prostituting herself out at the young age of 11. She turned back to prostitution to provide herself with an income, and she was living in the woods behind her grandfather's home. Fast forward a few years, it's now May 27th of 1974, and 18-year-old Aileen has been arrested in Jefferson County, Colorado for a DUI, disorderly conduct, and firing a .22 pistol from a moving vehicle. 2 years later, Aileen has now hitchhiked her way to Florida. This is when she would meet 69-year-old yacht club president Louis Fell. The two quickly got married, but Aileen did not settle down. She still liked to frequent bars. I mean, let's be real. She's 20 years old, he's 69. Why do we think she's in this marriage? Not to settle down, not to start a family with a 69-year-old man, because let's face it, in the 70s, he's probably going to be dead in like 5 years tops. Let's be real here. She still would often frequent the local bars, constantly getting into fights, and she even went to jail briefly for assault. Then at one point, she hit Lewis, her husband, her 69-year-old husband, with his own cane. I mean, that's elderly abuse and domestic assault. After Aileen hit Lewis with his own cane, he decided he had had enough of her, and he filed a restraining order. And keep in mind, this has all happened just weeks after their wedding. I really hope he made her sign a prenup. Oh yeah, I think I forgot to mention, but Aileen was born in Michigan. After her fight with Lewis, she eventually makes her way back there. I'm kind of thinking maybe she's a little bit on the run, you know? This old, rich, white dude is saying she hit him with his cane, so maybe she kind of thought she ought to lay low for a little while. So she finds herself back in Michigan on July 14th, 1976, when she is arrested and charged with assault and disturbing the peace for throwing a cue ball at a bartender's head. Sounds like little Miss Aileen has some real anger issues. Just 3 days after that incident, on July 17th, Eileen's older brother Keith died of cancer. Aileen received $10,000 of life insurance money when her brother died. On July 21st, Aileen and Lewis officially had their marriage annulled after only 9 weeks of marriage. Then in August, Aileen was fined $105 for drunk driving. She used part of that money she got from her brother's life insurance to pay her fine, and then she just blew all the rest of it. She bought herself a bunch of luxury items, including a brand new car, which she wrecked shortly after purchasing, probably drunk. With her history. After all of that, she eventually made her way back to Florida, and in May of the next year, Aileen found herself arrested once again, this time for robbing a convenience store. Guess what she got? A whole $35 and 2 packs of cigarettes. Worth it. For robbing the convenience store, she got sentenced to prison on May 4th, 1982, and she was released on June 30th of 1983. She was arrested again the next year for attempting to pass forged checks at a bank in Key West. Then in November of 1985, Aileen was suspected of stealing a pistol and ammo for it in Pasco County. January 4th, 1986, Aileen finds herself in trouble yet again. This time she's in Miami, and she's been charged with car theft, resisting arrest, and obstruction of justice for using her aunt's identification when asked to provide ID by police. In the stolen car, police found a .38 revolver and ammo, possibly the one they suspected her of stealing a couple of years before, but who knows? Then, about 6 months later, on June 2nd, Volusia County deputy sheriffs detained Aileen for questioning after a male companion, I think we all know what that means when it comes to Aileen, had accused her of pulling a gun on him and demanding $200. Police found a .22 pistol under the passenger seat where Aileen had been sitting, as well as extra ammo on her person. This is also around the same time that Aileen would meet Tyra Moore, who was a hotel maid. The two met at a Daytona Beach lesbian bar, and they moved in together very quickly after they first met, and Aileen used her prostitution skills to support herself and Tyra. Tyra would also occasionally work at whatever motel they were living at the time. Then on the 4th of July, 1987, detained Aileen and Tyra at a bar after an incident where they were accused of assault and battery with a beer bottle. Now we're going to fast forward to November 30th of 1989. Aileen has been working as a prostitute as per usual, and she's still with Tyra Moore. The two still live in motels together, still frequent bars, still get in fights, still get arrested for stupid petty crimes. Now, Aileen encounters 51-year-old Richard Charles Mallory. He is an electronics store owner in Clearwater, Florida, and he is trying to buy some of Aileen's services. What Richard does not know is he is about to become Aileen's first victim. He is a convicted rapist, and Aileen claims that he tried to rape her, so she defended herself and shot him in self-defense. Aileen claims she was sodomized and brutally beaten after Richard drove her to an abandoned area for sexual favors. Volusia County Sheriff's deputies found Richard's car abandoned 2 days later, but his body would not be found until December 13th, several miles away in a wooded area. Cause of death was determined to be gunshot wounds to the left lung, but Richard was shot several times. About 6 months later, 47-year-old David Andrew Spears, a construction worker, was declared missing on May 19th of 1990. His naked body was found along U.S. Route 19 in Citrus County, Florida on June 1st, 1990. He was determined to have been shot 6 times by a .22 caliber pistol. On May 31st, 1990, Aileen claimed her third victim. Charles Edmund, now I guarantee I'm not going to pronounce this right, CARSKADDON, I don't know. I'm going to call him CARSKADDON, probably not right. He was 40 years old and a part-time rodeo worker at the time. His body was found on June 6, 1990 in Pasco County, Florida. He had been shot 9 times with a .20 caliber gun, and his body had been found wrapped in an electric blanket. Witnesses saw Aileen in possession of his car after his disappearance, and she had also pawned a gun that was identified as being Charles. Charles's? Charles's. Next, Aileen would claim 65-year-old Peter Abraham Siems? I don't know about that one either. Who was a retired merchant seaman. On June 9th, 1990, Peter had left Jupiter, Florida, and headed to Arkansas, but he never made it. On July 4th, 1990, Peter's car was found in Orange Springs, Florida, which is about 4 hours from Jupiter, so he did not make it very far. So it turns out that a few people spotted Aileen and Tyra ditching Peter's car after they had been involved in an accident. Witnesses were able to provide police with Aileen and Tyra's names and their descriptions. This resulted in a media campaign to find them. Police were also able to lift a palm print that they found on the inside door handle of the car. And guess what Aileen has on file in her criminal records? Fingerprints. Police ended up finding some of Peter's belongings in various pawn shops, and they were able to get full fingerprints off of those. So they were able to take the records they had for Aileen and match her fingerprints to Peter's pawned items. But this did not stop Aileen from continuing her murder spree. 50-year-old Troy Eugene Burress, a sausage salesman from Ocala, was reported missing on July 31st of 1990. His body was found 5 days later on August 4th. He had been found in a wooded area along State Road 19 in Marion County. Troy had been shot twice. Then on September 11th, same year, a 56-year-old retired U.S. Air Force Major, former state child abuse investigator, and former chief of police, Charles Dick Humphreys, would be Aileen's next victim. His body was found on September 12th, once again in Marion County. He was found fully clothed, shot 6 times, once in the head and once in the torso. His car was later found in Suwannee County. Aileen's final victim would be 62-year-old Walter Antonio. He was a trucker, a security guard, and a police reservist, who is basically somebody who works part-time policing functions or activities and does it on a voluntary basis without pay. His body was found November 19th. He was found nearly naked and close to a remote logging road in Dixie County. He had been shot 4 times, and his car was found 5 days later in Brevard County. On January 9th, 1991, Aileen was arrested on an outstanding warrant at the Last Resort Biker Bar in Volusia County, Florida. Police found Tyra in Scranton, Pennsylvania the next day. So Tyra really did not want to go down for Aileen's crimes, and it did not take much for police to talk her into helping them get a confession out of Aileen, because she really, as far as we can tell, she really didn't have anything to do with the actual murders. I mean, she definitely knew. She had to have known. I'm pretty sure she claims she had no idea that Aileen was killing these men, but I feel like she had to have known. She definitely knew something fishy was going on. So in exchange for her cooperation, Tyra got immunity. And police quickly took Tyra back to Florida, where they set her up in a motel to start their attempts to get Aileen's confession. Tyra made numerous phone calls to Aileen, pleading with Aileen to help her clear her name, to confess, just tell police that Tyra had nothing to do with the murders. On January 16, 1991, Aileen confessed to the murders. She claimed she had killed the men out of self-defense after they had tried to rape her. Almost exactly a year later, on January 14th, 1992, Aileen went on trial for victim number 1's murder, Richard Mallory. So, Florida has this weird law called Williams Rule, which normally when you go to trial, prosecution is not allowed to bring up any of your past crimes, especially if they have nothing to do with this current crime. Like if it's involving the crime that you're being tried for, yeah, it's usually free to talk about. But if it's just like, you know, Aileen has a very long history of committing crimes, so Williams' rule allows for prosecutors in Florida to bring up their past, and that is exactly what happened in this case. The prosecution was able to showcase that Aileen was just a hardened criminal and she had a pattern of illegal activity. With the help of Tyra Moore's testimony, Aileen was convicted of Richard's murder on January 27, 1992. When it came time for sentencing, psychiatrists for the defense testified that Aileen was mentally unstable and had been diagnosed with borderline personality and antisocial personality disorder. 4 days later, she was sentenced to death. Then on March 31st of that same year, Aileen pled no contest to the murders of Charles Humphreys, Troy BURRESS, and David Spears. She claimed she wanted to, quote, get right with God, and that's why she confessed. She made a statement to the court that read in part, quote, I wanted to confess in you that Richard Mallory did violently rape me, as I've told you, but these others did not. They only began to start to. Then on May 15th, Aileen was given 3 more death sentences. In June, Aileen pled guilty to the murder of Charles CARSKADDON, and in November she received her 5th death sentence. In February of 1993, she pled guilty to the murder of Walter Antonio and received yet another death sentence. But no charges were ever brought for the murder of Peter SIEMS since his body was never found. So in total, she ended up with 6 death sentences. During the trial, Aileen's defense made efforts to bring forth evidence on Richard Mallory, who had been arrested for intent to commit rape in Maryland years before. He ended up getting committed to a maximum security facility that provided remediation to sexual offenders. Records obtained from that institution showed that from 1958 to 1962, Richard was committed for treatment and observation resulting from a criminal charge of assault with intent to rape, and overall he received 8 years of treatment from the facility. In 1961, the facility recorded that, quote, it was observed of Mr. MALLORY that he possessed strong sociopathic trends. But the judge refused to allow this evidence into court, and Eileen's request for a retrial was denied. So over the years, Aileen told several inconsistent stories about the killings. First, she claimed that all 7 men had tried to rape her while she was working as a prostitute. Then she recanted that series of events and claimed that robbery and a desire to leave no witnesses was her reason for murdering. Eventually, Aileen was assessed using the psychopathy checklist test. So this test evaluates individuals on a 20-item list of antisocial interpersonal behaviors. Each item is scored at 0, 1, or 2, and there is a maximum score of 40. It's believed that scores of above 25 or 30 are consistent with a diagnosis of psychopathy, and Aileen scored a 32. So take that information as you will. In 1996, an appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court was denied, and in 2001, Aileen decided to petition the Florida State Supreme Court. She stated her intentions to dismiss her legal counsel and terminate all pending appeals. In her petition, she wrote, quote, "I killed those men, robbed them as cold as ice, and I'd do it again, too. There's no chance in keeping me alive or anything because I'd kill again. I have hate crawling through my system. I am so sick of hearing this 'she's crazy' stuff. I've been evaluated so many times. I'm competent, sane, and I'm trying to tell the truth. I'm one who seriously hates human life and would kill again." Eileen's attorneys tried to do damage control. They argued she was not mentally competent to make such requests. But still, Aileen insisted that she knew what she was doing, and a court-appointed panel of psychiatrists agreed. In 2002, Aileen began accusing prison guards of tainting her food with dirt, spit, and urine. She even claimed she overheard conversations among prison personnel, stating, quote, "Trying to get me so pushed over the brink by them I'd wind up committing suicide before an execution." And she complained of strip searches, tight handcuffing, door kicking, and frequent window checks, low water pressure, mildew on mattresses, and, quote, "catcalling and distaste and pure hatred towards me." Then Aileen threatened to boycott showers and food trays when certain guards were on duty. And in the meantime, she complained about how her stomach was growling, and she was forced to take showers in her sink in her cell. In the weeks before her execution, Aileen gave several interviews to filmmaker Nick Broomfield. And in those interviews, she talked about, quote, "being taken away to meet God and Jesus and the angels and whatever is beyond the beyond." In her final interview, she said she was mind tortured and her head was being crushed by sonic pressure. She also claimed that the food poisonings and other abuses worsened each time she complained, and that those who were torturing her's goal was to make her appear insane or to in fact drive her insane. Eventually she turned on the interviewer though, and she yelled, quote, "You sabotaged my ass. Society and the cops and the system. A woman got executed and was used for movies and books and shit." Her final on-camera words were, "Thanks a lot, society, for railroading my ass." On October 9th, 2002, at 9:47 a.m., Aileen Wuornos was executed. She declined her last meal, which could have been anything under $20, and opted for a cup of coffee instead. When asked if she had any last words, she said, "Yes. I would just like to say I'm sailing with the Rock, and I'll be back, like Independence Day, with Jesus, June 6th, like the movie. Big mothership, and I'll be back. I'll be back." Okay, Aileen. Let us know when you come back. Nick Broomfield, that filmmaker who interviewed her, later speculated on her state of mind and her motive for the murders. He stated, "I think this anger developed inside of her, and she was working as a prostitute. I think she had a lot of awful encounters on the road, and I think this anger just spilled out from inside her, and finally exploded into incredible violence. That was her way of surviving. I think Aileen really believed that she had killed in self-defense. I think someone who's deeply psychotic can't tell the difference between something that is life-threatening and something that is a minor disagreement. That you could say something she didn't agree with, she would get into a screaming black temper about it. And I think that's what had caused these things to happen. And at the same time, when she wasn't in those moods, there was an incredible humanity to her. Now, I don't know if I agree with that last little statement, but I think the rest of it is spot on. I think that if it wasn't for her horrific childhood, that if it wasn't for her prostituting herself as her only career for her whole entire life, that things probably would have turned out differently for Aileen. Had she actually, like, tried to be a decent human being, she probably could have. But she chose prostitution and just being an all-around criminal as her way of life, and that led her to committing the crimes she committed, and she got what she deserved for it. Let me know in the comments what you guys think of this story. Don't forget to let me know what name suggestions you have for the series as well. Also, let me know if there's anything I missed in this story or any just recommendations you have for me, suggestions, what have you. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Don't forget to subscribe before you go. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you next time. Bye!